Ladies and gentlemen, fellas, how you doing? Let's get into today top 10 running back ranks for 2021 fantasy football. We already covered the top 4 in a previous video, which you can find linked down below. I'll put it up in the cards. Those top 4 in order: Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott might be a shocker there for you, Dalvin Cook and Saquon coming off an ACL, torn ACL, back-to-back years with injuries, Barkley. So if you want to see the in-depth on those guys, you can check that video out. But now we're going to start from 5 through 10. 6 running backs to cover today. And this gets us through the top 10, which is those premier RB1s, right? So the number 5 guy is a guy I wouldn't be shocked if you wanted to take him number 2 overall. If you want to take him number 1 overall, there's arguments because those guys like McCaffrey, and there's some guys up there that usually deal with injuries. What's left with Dalvin Cook injuries every single year, and Saquon, right? But wouldn't be shocked if you wanted to take him higher, especially in non-PPR. And that guy's name is Mr. Consistent as it gets, Derrick Henry, one of only 2 running backs who started a game for their team in week 1. Who played all 16 games. One of only 2 was Derrick Henry, a man who had over 400 opportunities, 409 to be exact, the most we've seen out of the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, we had that big 401 opportunity season 2 years back from Christian McCaffrey, and then he ended up getting hurt. But there's a big difference between McCaffrey and Derrick Henry, and oh yeah, it's about 50 pounds of muscle, if you will. And here's the thing with Derrick Henry. The last 2 seasons, we've seen massive usage out of him. He was the rushing leader back in 2019, 15 games. He missed 1 game that year, 1 game ever in his career, which has not been as long as people think it has. Look, we see a lot of touches out of Derrick Henry and a lot of RB1 weeks and a lot of top finishing weeks these last 2 seasons, and everybody thinks, oh, Derrick Henry. This guy's like 28 years old because, he got drafted a while ago. No, he got drafted. He sat behind DeMarco Murray for like a year, and then he started to get implemented into the offense. He hasn't been in the league all that long. He doesn't have a lot of wear on his tires as much as it might seem like he does. So his 328 opportunities in 15 games in 2019 increased in 2020, and he was able to handle the load, and I think he's going to be able to do it yet again. He's just as consistent as they come. Half-point PPR to non-PPR, he's going to look fantastic. PPR is the one spot where you might say, oh, he's going to be the one sketchy running back up here because the lack of a mega ceiling. He needs those touchdowns. He needs his offense to remain efficient, but under Ryan Tannehill the last 2 seasons it has. A.J. Brown is still there. They don't have as many other weapons in the receiving game, but I expect it to still go through Derrick Henry, who doesn't have Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator, sure, but I don't think you go from giving a guy 400 plus opportunities to giving him 300, dropping him 100 or 150. It's just not going to happen. Now we can put up the backfield competition and really the lack of backfield competition on the screen right now. He was number 4 in opportunity share last year, and they just have nobody. They have nobody. They drafted Darrington Evans last year. Some people thought, maybe Darrington Evans can be the satellite back here. Not at all. He saw 4 targets and 2 receptions in the few games that he played. He's out of Appalachian State, a smaller school. Not much there in Darrington Evans. They had, Jeremy McNichols came on the field in some passing down situations and blossom game last year. None of those guys were all that involved. 17 targets for McNichols, 47 attempts. I mean, he had the most opportunities on this team, and he still didn't crack 60 total opportunities in 16 games. And then Brian Hill is somebody that they picked up, former Atlanta Falcon, former 5th-round pick out of Wyoming. Not a great player, got cut by the Falcons, who are needing of running back depth. There's nobody behind Mike Davis in Atlanta right now. And Atlanta didn't like Brian Hill enough to say, we have no depth and we don't want you. So there's nobody here. That's kind of already understood and known. The new offensive coordinator is Todd Downing. He's going to be taking over. He's an in-house hire, really just a promotion, taking over for Arthur Smith. And he's just a former tight ends coach. Not much analysis to really give you there. But what I will say is that touchdowns matter in fantasy a whole lot. They swing the outcomes from you being the RB24 if you only score 4 touchdowns to you being the goddamn RB1 or 2 like Aaron Jones the year back scoring 19 touchdowns, right? They swing the outcomes. Jones without those touchdowns, just average touchdown finish, would have finished outside the top 10. And Derrick Henry last year had 65 red zone touches, 17 total touchdowns, and ranked top 2 over the last 2 seasons in goal line carries. Yes, Derrick Henry's number 5. He's a very consistent player. It shouldn't shock any of you. Now, number 6 might surprise some people here. And this guy was my RB4 until I started to look into a little bit more things and got a little bit higher on Ezekiel Elliott. But my number 6 RB this year is not Alvin Kamara. We still have not had him on here. We have a specific video on Alvin Kamara. We will talk about him in this video because he's a top 10 running back still. But a specific video on why I'm worried about him. But number 6 for me today is going to be 1, Aaron Jones. The Packers, as of this recording, have not traded Aaron Rodgers. He is not going to retire, in my opinion, and it doesn't seem like that. So it looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to play for the Packers unless he holds out for a ton. And maybe this comes back on my face and he gets traded to Denver. But we're going to assume for this video that Aaron Rodgers is still there. And now Jamal Williams is out. Jamal Williams is gone. He is gone. And I know A.J. Dillon, their second-round pick from a year back, is going to be in this backfield, but he's not a pass-catching running back. Jamal Williams in 2019 was a top 5 overall graded pass-catching running back from Pro Football Focus. This is a quality running back. He's somebody who's getting goal line touches and opportunities as well. If I put on the screen right now the splits when there is no Jamal Williams on the field for Aaron Jones in his career. It was just 6 games, right? 52 total games of the career, 6 games without Jamal Williams. You can see right here, his fantasy point per minute production goes up by over 4 points per game. That is a lot. Why is it happening? Well, he's adding a reception per game. He's adding 1.5 targets per game. His obviously touchdown opportunity goes up as he's more of a workhorse around the red zone. And since the receptions are going up, the receiving yards are going up. So he increases by 4 fantasy points per game with Jamal Williams off the field. That is major. And yes, you might be thinking, oh, but A.J. Dillon's going to come in and sweep up some touchdowns. That's not the case in Green Bay. Green Bay does not play this, Aaron Jones, you get down to the 5-yard line. Oh, we hammer in Jamal Williams in the past. Oh, now we're going to hammer in A.J. Dillon, who's a massive monster. They didn't even do that last year when A.J. Dillon started to play during the end of the season and in the postseason when Jamal Williams was hurt. They didn't do that. What Green Bay does is rotations with running backs. Aaron Jones, you get the first 2 rotations, and now you get the 3rd drive, A.J. Dillon this year. And if A.J. Dillon's drive happens to be in the red zone, he'll get the touchdowns. That's how it works. They do rotations. The only other way A.J. Dillon's coming into vulture touchdowns is if Aaron Jones has like a 70-yard run down to the 2-yard line and he needs a breather, which doesn't happen all that often in the NFL, right? Doesn't happen as much as at least we think it might happen. So I'll put the rest of the backfield competition up on the screen right now, and it's not much outside of A.J. Dillon, who, yes, he is going to be a bigger back around the goal line, but we just kind of tempered expectations there and worries and concerns. He's not a pass-catching running back, really had no receptions in college. Jamal Williams, in my opinion, was a bigger threat to Aaron Jones' workload than A.J. Dillon is going to be. The 250-pound second-year player now, he did have that one big game against Tennessee, which was a blowout. He got some run in the postseason. There wasn't not much showing last year at A.J. Dillon. He dropped a couple of passes. He's not expected to have much hands. And then after that, they drafted a 7th rounder in Kylan Hill, who won't be involved unless Aaron Jones is hurt. And if Aaron Jones is hurt, well, then you have bigger problems for your fantasy team. So Aaron Jones, for me, looks like a fantastic option, continues to create yards on his own, continues to be a very strong pass catcher, plays on an offense that you would expect to be down by the goal line. And oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers probably not on his FU tour for MVP this year, throwing all 1-yard touchdowns to Devontae Adams, meaning more opportunities for Aaron Jones to get the pendulum swinging back from the 19 touchdown season. It dropped back down last year. Let's get it back up this season. Lastly, we can close the door on Aaron Jones by saying he should be dealing with yet again another top offensive line. They ranked number 2 in run blocking last year, and you can see it on the screen. Now, they did lose probably one of the top 2 centers in the NFL in Corey Linsley. They did let some other guys go from the offensive line, and Lane Taylor and Rick Wagner. We'll see what they add there. Bakhtiari coming off of injury, so I don't expect it to be top 2 yet again, but definitely top 10 and borderline top 5. So now we get into the number 7 ranked running back, and yes, we're still not going to be talking about Alvin Kamara here, but the number 7 ranked running back, and as we get into it, I just want to let you know that we do have a 2021 fantasy football draft guide. It's going to have all these players' profiles, all the ranks, top 200 tiers, everything for you to draft off of, key stats, projections, all that type of stuff. You can check it out down below. There's a lot involved in there, and I'll let you kind of search it and see what you want. But if you want to get it for free, thanks to Prize Picks, they're going to be giving it as a free add-on if you sign up for their site. All that information down below, free draft guide for this season. My number 7 running back is going to be Nick Chubb, a man who only played 12 games last year because he got a little bit nicked up, but he was arguably the best running back as just a pure runner, not factoring in any pass catching work because he lost a lot of that just to not being a great pass catcher, the scheme, and also Kareem Hunt being in the backfield. The 25-year-old running back in the prime of his career, 227 pounds, is, in my opinion, the best pure runner in football. And yet again, for the 2nd year in a row, he basically showed that last year. He ranked number 1 in yards created per touch. He ranked basically top 2 in broken tackles, depending on the metrics that you looked at. He was 5.9 in yards per touch. He's just extremely efficient, and the scheme is what matters. The number 1 offensive line, Jack Conklin, they got in free agency, highest ranked right tackle. Really good signing there, right? They ended up having Wyatt Teller, who was the number 1 run blocker in all of Pro Football Focus last year. He took a step forward. They obviously had Jedrick Wills, the rookie, so the offensive line looks fantastic. I expect it to be fantastic again for the running backs back there. So he's going to be in the scheme that worked with Kevin Stefanski, Dalvin Cook bringing it over from Minnesota, bringing it to Cleveland. It worked. Baker Mayfield took a step forward and became more of a composed and less mistake-prone quarterback. That's going to help your offense sustain drives, more touchdowns. And here's the big thing for Nick Chubb. More touchdowns are coming, not only for probably this offense, but Nick Chubb specifically. Nick Chubb was number 6 in goal line carries, even missing 4 games last year. He averaged over 3 red zone touches per game, and he only ended up seeing 3 red zone touchdowns. That's going to increase with more volume. That's going to increase as this team gets yet again probably better with another year of experience for Baker Mayfield, the coaching staff, and a full offseason to work with, unlike last year. Now, the backfield competition, we know Kareem Hunt's back there, but it's fine. Let Kareem Hunt take these touches away. Kareem Hunt last year wasn't getting goal line opportunities. He wasn't getting as many carries when Nick Chubb was healthy. Now, he still sees passing game usage, but a lot of the time, these guys were on the field at the exact same time, even in games where they both were healthy. You see Nick Chubb going out there and playing 68% of the snaps, and Kareem Hunt playing 60% of the snaps, 55, meaning that they're on the field at the same time. They're using Kareem Hunt in the slot a little bit, or just both of these guys out of the backfield. So it's fine. They both have roles on this team, and Nick Chubb is to be the touchdown getter and the guy who goes for over 1,200 total yards. Outside of that, it's just Dearness Johnson, an undrafted free agent that's going to be there at a USF, and I don't expect him to be much. He had 21 carries when Nick Chubb was hurt last year. Other than that, not much in Dearness Johnson coming through here. But the game environment should be good. It should be an improved defense, an elite offensive line, a quality quarterback with a 10-win implied total. Nick Chubb wheels up the number 7 running back for us. Let's get now into the number 8 running back on the slate. And yes, we were finally getting to Alvin Kamara. We have a whole video on Alvin Kamara, so I don't want to kind of go over everything yet again. I kind of prompt you to that video so you can see the extensive breakdown of the Alvin Kamara and why he's dropping for us. But in a nutshell, it's basically that Drew Brees is not there. We don't know who the quarterback will be, but even if it is Jameis Winston, Winston never had a pass-catching running back in his career at Tampa Bay. Ronald Jones, Peyton Barber. Dare Ogunbowale was like a rookie. He didn't really get much involved when he was there. He still isn't. He's not that great of a player. But in games without Drew Brees in his career, he's played 8 games without Drew Brees in his career, 4 last year when Taysom Hill started. Alvin Kamara's PPR fantasy scoring goes from 22.5 to 17, loses about 5.5 fantasy points. His receptions go from 5.6 to 4.3. Receiving yards from 50 to 30, 20 receiving yards per game go down. He loses about a target and a half per game, but 5.5 fantasy points per game basically is what Alvin Kamara is losing. It's 8 games. It's not a fantastic sample, but it's a half a season of a sample, so it's something. It's at least something to show us that, yes, Drew Brees does check down a lot to running backs. Yes, the scheme is going to have Drew Brees having 100-plus targets to Alvin Kamara in the past 4 years. Kamara, 81 receptions plus in his last 4 years, or his first 4 years in the NFL. I don't expect that to happen yet again. Whether it is Taysom Hill, I definitely don't expect it to happen. Whether it is Jameis Winston, I don't expect it to happen as much. More downfield targets for Jameis Winston. More running and less dump-offs if it's Taysom Hill, and that's concerning. So if Alvin Kamara loses 20 receptions this year, and those 20 receptions for the man who led all of football last year in yards after the catch at over 700, blew everybody else out of the water, if he's going to start to lose receiving yards now, let's just say 20 per game, if it's yards per reception around 10, if he's going to start to lose like 150 receiving yards and 20 receptions, there's 35 fantasy points right there. I mean, that's just 2.5 fantasy points per game. That's not even the 5 that you're seeing right here. Obviously, receiving touchdowns start to go into that. So now Alvin Kamara goes from being like a sure thing as a top 3, top 4 running back. Now he starts to slide to this like RB9, RB10 range. And if it gets really bad and he starts to see a drop in 30 or 35 receptions out there and the scheme completely changes and Taysom Hill is starting more games than people expect, I know Jameis got the early beat. Well, then that's when he can start to drop outside the top 10. And you might be saying there's no way he's going to do it. But again, it's not copy and paste from last year because it's not a copy and paste offense. It's still a loaded roster, but it's not a Drew Brees offense on there. Latavius Murray's in the backfield. He's going to get his touches, but it's Alvin Kamara's. Goal line opportunities are always been Alvin Kamara's. Murray doesn't usually get any. He only had 3 goal line touches last year to Kamara's 10 and nowhere near as many red zone opportunities. So Kamara's still going to be the guy in the red zone. It's just that receiving game can take a massive hit. We already have a sample right now thanks to RotoViz on the screen like you're seeing. 5 fantasy point, 5.5 fantasy point per game difference. That's concerning. It is still a decent offensive line. It should be an okay team environment, but we really won't know until we see what this team looks like without Drew Brees. So the number 8 running back for me is going to be one Alvin Kamara. And now we get into the number 9 running back who's getting all the coach speak in the world. That number 9 running back right now is Joe Mixon for me. And Joe Mixon was like a top 6, top 7 running back for me last year. Obviously, the injury, it looked like he might come back every single week. He never did. But there's some positive things to be taking out of Joe Mixon now. They continue to invest in the offensive line. I'll put up the offseason additions for this Bengals team on the screen right now. They added Riley Reif. That's good to see from Minnesota. Now, I don't know how good he's going to be, but they added him at least. They got something there, right? And then they ended up taking in the draft 2 offensive tackles in Jackson Carman and Deontay Smith. They also took a center. So they ended up investing yet again after drafting Jonah Williams last year, and he got hurt, so now he's back. And a lot of this is not for Joe Mixon. It's for Joe Burrow, your first overall pick. Protect him so he doesn't tear up his knee again. But that's going to help when you have better, younger offensive linemen. Maybe it takes a little while for them to gel together, but at least there's investment in the offensive line. So there's wheels up number 1 for an offensive line that was not good last year. Got their quarterback's ACL basically torn. So wheels up number 1 for Joe Mixon. And when he's healthy, he's been elite, whether it's as a pass catcher when he gets that work or whether it's just been on the ground from a broken tackle standpoint, leading the league in broken tackles last year, up there yet again on a per touch this year, whether it's yards created per touch, all those types of things. But now the backfield competition is great. Giovanni Bernard's not back there, and that's awesome. Get Giovanni Bernard out of this backfield. There's nobody left. And here's a sample from RotoViz with 4 games in his career. Only 4 games Joe Mixon has played without Giovanni Bernard healthy, but there's at least something to take away from this. In those 4 games, he's averaging 5 fantasy points more per game. That's 95 fantasy points, almost 100 over the course of a 17-game season. And there's not much other competition to take away from this opportunity. Now, why is his fantasy points going up by 5 per game? Well, here you go right now. He's averaging basically an extra reception per game, 2 more targets per game, and he starts to see just overall more snap share, which leads to more touchdowns and things like that. So this is a small sample of just 4 games, right, with Giovanni Bernard not on the field. It's going to lead to more rushing yards. This is a small sample that says it leads to less, but more touchdown opportunities overall. 5 more fantasy points per game because of the receiving yards upside and the overall snap percentage increasing above 60-65% to the 70+% range. Outside of that, the backfield competition that you can see on the screen right now is really Nobody. It's Trevion Williams, a former 6th-round pick coming off of some injuries out of Texas A&M. He looked decent last year when he got some touches. He ended up averaging 6 yards per touch, 5.1 yards per carry, but it's a small sample. It's Samaje Perine, who played last year a lot with Giovanni Bernard, got some goal line opportunities, the former 4th-round pick out of Oklahoma when Joe Mixon was hurt. Again, he kind of has a lot of skill sets similar to Joe Mixon, just Joe Mixon is better. I don't expect him to be getting on there for red zone touches, stealing them away from Mixon, as Mixon is a very nice and I would say a quote-unquote bigger back at 228 pounds. So Perine's role, not really going to be there this year. And then there's Chris Evans, a 6th-rounder that they took last year. In college, he only had 20 targets with Michigan, although that's kind of the way the offense was. He wasn't great. 5.1 yards per carry is fine, only a 5% target share. I don't see him taking away touches from Mixon. He's probably more so insurance to another Mixon injury. So maybe Trevion Williams goes into the passing game role, although Trevion Williams only 5 targets last year in 6 games played. There's really nobody here from a pass-catching running back standpoint. It's not like they have any gadget receivers who are going to go into the backfield either. Jamar Chase is an outside alpha. Tyler Boyd is a slot, right? And T. Higgins is an outside kind of alpha, and maybe now your B option, right, with Jamar Chase there. So it's Joe Mixon wheels up in the passing game as our number 9 running back of the season. Now as we get into the final guy, the number 10 running back that's in the rankings, the top 10 is going to be closed up, and then we'll kind of get into some of the top 12, top 15 really, and then we'll close these guys up and start to talk about breakouts, sleepers, all that type of stuff at the running back, wide receiver position, the top overall tiers and top overall plays as we continue to get through in July and August and when the season starts. If you enjoy this content, if you're still here right now on the podcast YouTube version, subscribe to this content, follow it, and also hit that like and subscribe button, the big one. Tell a friend to tell a friend. The 2021 fantasy football playlist will be popping up after this video is over, and also a chance for you to subscribe there as well. And just a reminder about that draft guide, you can get it for free. It's a limited time offer, so check it out. Thank you, Prize Picks, for making that possible. Check it out, linked down below. The number 10 running back rank for me, it's not going to be Jonathan Taylor. He's not in the top 10. It's not going to be Austin Eckler. Who is this guy going to be? It's going to be one Cam Akers. And we can start with Cam Akers with just talking about the environment that he's in. Malcolm Brown, a touchdown vulture, a veteran who's just annoying, is gone. It's Darrell Henderson, who was clearly worse and also not staying healthy, and Cam Akers was better down the stretch last year. So just in general in the backfield, it's looking better for Cam Akers, but everything's wheels up here. They got a guy, Matthew Stafford, who you see Sean McVay is more excited about than Jared Goff. Keeps the offensive line, gets to the red zone more. We'll check down to running backs a lot. Think Theo Riddick in the past, right? Check down to the running backs a good amount more than people expect and think. The scheme did not allow him to check down to Swift as much because he had bad coaching in Matt Patricia there, who wanted to run the ball a ton with like Adrian Peterson. But Matt Stafford will throw down to his running backs a good amount. And Cam Akers is in a fantastic spot. Vegas is implying 10.5 wins here for this team. Okay, so now you're going to be ahead in game scripts, leading in games if you're going to win. The number 1 overall defense last year, and usually those things regress, but even if they regress to number 6 or number 7, they're still a loaded defense. Okay, so now you're leading in games, right? Hence the 10.5 win total. And an above average game environment, for me, that just equals sex. Sex from a fantasy football standpoint in terms of more touches for Cam Akers, more goal line opportunities, more scoring for this offense, meaning more touchdowns, which again swings the pendulum from being the RB18 to being the RB7 8, or where we have him at right now. In median projections, RB10 ranked. There's no backfield competition on this team. You can see some of the offseason changes right now, bringing in Deshaun Jackson, Matthew Stafford outside of the draft. In the draft, they drafted Jake Funk, who's more of a tight end / fullback. Don't worry, that's not backfield competition. And then they drafted 3 fucking wide receivers. So I don't know what they're doing here. Tutu Atwell being one of them as well. And then they ended up getting rid of Malcolm Brown. So less competition in this backfield, and where the competition stands right now is literally squat. Let me name some of the guys in this backfield. Xavier Jones, 25 years old already, 0 NFL touches in 3 active games. Raymond Calais, a former 7th rounder last year from Louisiana Lafayette, he has had 0 career touches in 4 active games. And the only other guy right now on the roster is Mr. Darrell Henderson, former 3rd rounder out of Memphis, who they ended up taking then Cam Akers a year after, a round earlier, and giving him a lot more touches last year, so I don't expect Henderson to be much of a threat here. In 15 games last year, he only ran 9 routes per game, so Cam Akers in the passing game gets it there, and he only ended up playing 33% of the overall snaps. Now, he had a lot of red zone touches because he got work earlier in the season. Cam Akers was hurt to start the year off last year. Don't expect Henderson to be much of a threat here. Even if Henderson plays 30-35% of the snaps, giving 2/3 of the overall workload and pie of this offense to Cam Akers is extremely exciting. Again, they have 2 of the 4 guys in this backfield, 2 of the 3 not named Cam Akers, have never had a touch in the NFL. There's a lot of opportunity for Cam Akers. And if you're wanting to get in the comments and say, I think Cam Akers has the ability to be a top 5 back, I do as well. It's just, can we project that leap this year with Matthew Stafford? There's a decent chance you can, but from a median projection standpoint, he's my running back 10 right now with a lot of room to grow and a lot of upside to break out. So those are the top 10 running backs, 6 we covered in this video, 4 in the previous one. I appreciate you being here. Like, subscribe before you go, and hit the notification bell so you're notified of when these NFL videos are dropping daily throughout the week. Weekly live streams as well for the drafts for Underdog Fantasy. We do these mock drafts every single week, best ball and regular season long ones as well. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Any feedback you have for me, you can reach out on Twitter at Sal Vetri DFS. Instagram, I don't answer as much in the DMs, but you can follow me over there or in the comments right over here. Peace out, gang, and I'll see you in the next one.